Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, if your business uses a phone or even just sends texts for marketing, this is probably the deep dive you really need to hear right now. We're going to unpack the, frankly, stunning surge in lawsuits under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, the TCPA.
That's right, the
Outbound.
TCPA. This is the big federal law covering, well, basically outbound calls and texts, things like auto dialers, pre-recorded messages.
And the numbers we're seeing from 2024 and already the start of 2025, they aren't just showing like a small increase. It feels more like a fundamental shift in legal risk. So our mission today, dig into the stats, pinpoint these new compliance traps that plaintiff firms are jumping on, and look at how companies are trying to survive in what people are calling TCPA world.
Yeah, and what's really striking is how TCPA compliance has gone from maybe a legal footnote to a core operational issue. For any company doing outbound marketing at scale, the risk is, well, it's huge. We're talking statutory damages so high that one single class action, if it gets certified, it could literally end a company.
Existential is the word. Okay, let's ground this in the actual data first because the scale, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. 2024 really set a new, frankly, terrifying bar. What was the total case count last year?
The final tally for 2024 TCPA filings was 2,788 cases.
Wow.
And just for context, right, that was a 67% jump compared to 2023. A 67% increase.
67% in 1 year.
Yeah, that kind of growth in, a single area of regulation is, well, it's pretty exceptional.
And everything we're hearing about early 2025 suggests that trend isn't slowing down. It's maybe even speeding up.
It absolutely is. If you look at the bigger picture, 2025 started off even hotter. Focusing just on the class action filings for TCPA, the first quarter of 2025, 507 cases were filed.
507 in 3 months.
Right, and that's a massive leap. It's a 112% increase over the number filed back in Q1 of 2024.
Doubling the class action rate in just 12 months. That doesn't sound like things are calming down anytime soon.
No, not at all.
Can you break down maybe the single most alarming statistic we saw? Because I remember looking at the January numbers side by side, 2024 versus 2025. It was pretty stark.
Oh, yeah. The January 2025 numbers are possibly the biggest red flag. In that 1 month alone, January 2025, plaintiffs filed 172 TCPA class actions.
172.
Compare that to January 2024, the previous year. There were 64.
Okay.
So it's a 268% rise year over year just for January class actions.
It's a 268% spike. So like you said, 2025 isn't just continuing the 2024 trend, it's blowing past it. That signals something's really changed in how the plaintiff's bar is operating.
Definitely a strategic shift.
Which leads us to, I think, a really key question. Why the TCPA? Why is this law specifically generating so many class actions compared to other consumer laws? Because it's not just the sheer number of suits, it's the type. You said over 80% right now are filed as class actions.
That's really the core legal dynamic here. That concentration, it's record-breaking. It tells you the TCPA has basically become the go-to statute for class action lawyers in the consumer space. And 2024 saw the most TCPA class actions ever filed, precisely because of that incredibly high percentage.
And some months were even higher than 80%, right? Almost completely class actions.
That's right. We saw November 2024, for instance, 95.5% of all the TCPA cases filed were class actions.
95%?
Then December was still really high, 85.3%.
Yeah.
And this kind of concentration, it just looks completely different from what we see under other big consumer protection laws.
Right. So if you compare it to laws about, say, debt collection or credit reports, what do those class action rates look like? We need that contrast, I think, to really get the scale of the TCPA risk.
Good point. So take the FDCPA, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, covering abusive debt collection, or the FCRA, Fair Credit Reporting Act, dealing with credit report accuracy. Under those laws, class actions typically make up only about maybe 2 to 5% of the lawsuits filed.
2 to 5% versus 95% for TCPA.
Exactly. It really highlights this unique financial structure within the TCPA itself that just incentivizes these massive lawsuits over individual claims.
Okay, so the money is driving it. Let's quantify that. What does it actually mean for a company when one of these TCPA suits lands on their desk? You mentioned earlier it could sink a business.
Well, the potential costs are, they're designed to be punitive because the damages are per violation and they multiply incredibly fast. The average settlement for just one TCPA lawsuit is around $25,000. And remember, that's usually before you add the plaintiff's attorney fees.
$25K average settlement. Okay.
And on top of that, just the cost of defending a claim in court, even if you eventually win, Average court costs can easily run $40,000 to $50,000
Just to fight it.
just to fight it. Now, multiply those kinds of numbers across a class that could have thousands, even tens of thousands of people.
Right.
You very quickly get to astronomical figures that can and do exceed the entire net worth of many, decent-sized companies.
Right. That financial reality definitely explains why this whole litigation machine is running so incredibly hot. We know the general reasons are, more active plaintiff firms, maybe some confusion out there. But what specific vulnerabilities are these firms exploiting now? What are the new tactics beyond just the basic, you didn't get consent?
Yeah, what's fascinating, or maybe scary, is the level of technical detail they're targeting now. It's not just broad strokes. Businesses are getting caught in traps related to two main things lately. First, how they manage consent revocation when someone says stop. And second, really precise rules about the time of day they make calls or send texts.
Okay, let's start with revocation, because getting consent seems like one hurdle, but tracking when someone takes it back sounds like a whole other, maybe bigger challenge.
It is, and this failure to track revocation properly is, it's a sophisticated trap. See, a company might have perfect proof that a consumer gave consent initially. Maybe they clicked I agree on a web form, time-stamped and everything.
Right, seems solid.
But if that same consumer later texts back SOP or maybe tells a customer service agent, take me off your list, and that revocation doesn't get logged or updated instantly across all systems,
Oh.
and then the automated system sends just one more text or makes one more call, that single message becomes the violation that triggers the lawsuit. A lot of systems, frankly, struggle to immediately propagate that stop request everywhere it needs to go.
Well.
So a simple automated text suddenly becomes the basis for a potential multi-million-dollar class action.
Wow, that's a huge operational lift tracking consent withdrawal instantly across everything. Okay, let's pivot to that second big risk area. Time of day allegations. Are companies seriously getting sued over being a few minutes early or late?
Oh, absolutely, yes. These lawsuits claim companies contacted people outside the allowed window, so before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. in the consumer's local time.
Local time, that adds complexity too.
It does, and the specificity is kind of incredible, just to show how fast this tactic took off. In March 2025 alone, there was one law firm in South Florida. They filed over 100 lawsuits just based on these time-of-day violations. And critically, a lot of those were about text messages, not just phone calls.
Over 100 suits from one firm in 1 month on timing. Okay, so what are the exceptions? Surely if a customer asked you for information, you can contact them outside those hours.
Well, the rule for telephone solicitations is they are prohibited during those restricted hours, 9 p.m. to 8 a.m., unless one of three conditions applies. One,
Right.
the consumer gave prior express permission, specifically for contact outside those hours. Two, there's an established business relationship. Or three, the call is being made by or for a tax-exempt nonprofit.
Okay, permission, existing relationship, or nonprofit. But even with those, there seems to be some gray area, some uncertainty. Like, is the legal world totally clear that just having general consent protects you from a time-of-day claim?
That's exactly the point. This regulatory ambiguity is basically a gift to the plaintiff's bar. The big question being argued right now is whether getting general prior express consent, like checking the box online, definitively shields you from liability if the message happens to arrive at, say, 7:58 a.m. local time. In fact, just in March 2025, a formal petition was filed with the FCC asking them to clarify this exact issue.
So the regulators are being asked to step in.
Right. The fact that it even needs clarification shows how fuzzy the line is, and frankly, why companies are terrified of accidentally crossing that 8 a.m. or 9 p.m. threshold by even a minute.
Okay, given this incredibly high-stakes environment, just having compliance policies isn't enough, right? It has to be proactive. It sounds like survival. So what are the absolute key compliance steps companies need to nail down right now, especially for these revocation and time-of-day risks?
Yeah, the focus now is really on embedding compliance deep into the technology itself, making it automatic, not just a manual checklist item. So first, absolutely crystal clear documentation of consent when the lead is captured. That means granular data, like the timestamp, the IP address, exactly what they agreed to.
Okay, solid proof of consent.
Second, engineering the systems, the dialers, the texting platforms to strictly follow those allowed calling times. And critically, calculating it based on the consumer's local time zone accurately down to the minute.
Time zone accuracy, got it.
And third, having really robust, really fast procedures for honoring and tracking consent revocations, no matter how they come in text, email, phone call, web form. It needs to be captured and actioned immediately.
But even with all that, You're dealing with, as you said, sophisticated plaintiff firms, these professional litigators who seem to specialize in finding loopholes or setting traps. Standard compliance might not cut it against them, right? We've heard about these specialized risk mitigation services popping up, specifically designed to screen out these professional TCPA plaintiffs.
That's definitely the cutting edge of defense strategy now. These services are doing almost forensic work. They're actively investigating every single TCPA lawsuit filed, and they're building detailed profiles tracking different kinds of risk. So not just known litigators, but also tracking individuals who might be TCPA trolls, people sending demand letters fishing for settlements, but maybe haven't sued yet, or even tracking people who frequently complain to the Do Not Call registry and threaten lawsuits.
So it's moved way beyond just checking the DNC list. It's about profiling the person behind the number. What's the most advanced tech look like here?
Well, we're seeing proprietary algorithms being developed and deployed. For instance, some providers use something called a name recognition algorithm, or NRA.
NRI, okay.
Yeah, it's used to identify known serial attackers, not just by phone number, but by name. And crucially, it tries to link them to associated phone numbers, especially those prepaid or unregistered burner phones that these individuals often use to, hide who they are. It connects the dots.
That's a totally different way of thinking about defense, identifying the person, not just the phone.
It really is. And then for maximum, real-time protection against active litigators already on these lists, companies are integrating via APIs. So when the company system goes to dial a number, an API call instantly checks that number against these huge, constantly updated litigator databases.
In real time, before the call connects.
Exactly. If there's a match boom, the system blocks the call before it even goes out. No connection is made. This shift from scrubbing lists periodically to doing instantaneous pre-call checks really shows the level of, vigilance needed now.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what's the main takeaway for you listening right now? Clearly, the TCPA world is changing incredibly fast. We've seen this huge surge in class actions. What was it, 67% up in 2024?
That's right.
And these new battleground, super strict time of day rules and the nightmare of tracking consent revocation instantly. It means compliance isn't just a legal task anymore. It has to be a core part of how you operate, monitored constantly.
Yeah, and if you step back and look at the bigger picture, this intense vigilance, this rise of specialized scrubbing tech, these sophisticated plaintiff tactics, it really paints a picture of an escalating arms race, doesn't it? Like a cat and mouse game between the lawyers, the consumers trying to stop calls, and the businesses just trying not to get caught in the crossfire of a bad revocation policy or a mistimed text. They're pouring resources into defense.
And thinking about that financial driver, we talked about the $25,000 average settlement plus fees per case. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Given how TCPA class actions totally dominate compared to other consumer laws like FDCPA or FCRA, is the sheer size of the potential payout under the TCPA actually pulling lawyers and litigation away from those other important consumer protection areas? Is TCPA sucking all the oxygen out of the room? What really stands out to you about this whole situation?